As we have seen the past couple of weeks, China's Qing dynasty suffered massive defeats and hardships throughout the 19th century. Surely this couldn't go on for much longer. And indeed, it wouldn't. In 1911, the sequence of events was triggered that would result in the abdication of China's last emperor and collapse of the Qing dynasty. Many plots had been devised for this to happen. Twisted irony had it that it started with an accidental bomb explosion with no master plan at all, and Sun Yat-sen, principal architect of the revolution, was thousands of miles away. Over the years, Qing power and their mandate of heaven had eroded. Movements such as the rights recovery movement, the Yunnan peasant riots, and natural disasters were all signs of a dynasty in severe decline. To give you an idea of China's state, there had been 285 uprisings and rebellions during 1910, the majority of which were sparked by peasants. Barely any were modern in the sense that they did not have a clear vision or ideological basis, but there was one modern revolutionary movement attempting to overthrow the Qing. The Revolutionary Alliance, or Tongmenghui. Dr. Sun Yat-sen was the founder of the Tongmenghui, China's first modern revolutionary secret society. I provided a bit of background about Sun and his organization in the video about China's reformers and revolutionaries. Although he instigated 10 rebellions between 1906 and 11, all of these were vaguely planned and none succeeded. Nevertheless, the amount of members of the Tongmenghui rose to 10,000 by 1911. Its members were from all walks of life, but generally well-educated Chinese that had studied abroad, most in Japan. Some revolutionaries were students, others were civil servants, members of the new provincial assemblies even, and several were soldiers or officers in the new army units. Thing is, many revolutionaries figured the best way to eventually spark revolution was to subvert Qing troops. They wanted to get the soldiers that weren't yet revolutionaries on their side, so to say. Revolutionaries joined the army, maintaining a low profile and recruiting other soldiers for their revolutionary cells. Throughout China, especially around the Wuchang, Hanyang, and Hankou districts in Wuhan, Hubei's capital, Qing opposition blossomed. Radical young Chinese formed revolutionary cells in these big cities. In 1911, big cities generally had multiple revolutionary cells. It was during this year Sun Yat-sen embarked on a fundraising campaign to the United States. After all, the revolution desperately needed funds if it was to succeed. In southern China, the strategy of infiltrating the new army units was adopted. Working with revolutionary branches active in the region, most cities had a sizable portion of their army secretly engaged in revolutionary activity. Not really a stable combination, to put it mildly. In order to recruit new members for their movement, these revolutionaries often created an elaborate guise of book clubs and fraternities. If authorities grew suspicious of these clubs and decided to investigate, they would simply disband their fake clubs, only to regroup under a different name after some time at a different location. To give you an idea of how widespread this was, in 1911 around 5,000 to 6,000 of the Hubei new army troops turned out to be members of various secret revolutionary societies. This was about 1/3 of the total military force. Can you imagine? The fact that such a sizable amount of the military was part of secret resistance? Well, it was only a matter of time for things to turn sour. On the 9th of October 1911, a group of revolutionaries were fiddling with their bombs in their safe house, located in the Russian concession area of Hankou. They were planning a terrorist attack. Unfortunately for them, something went wrong and the bomb exploded prematurely. While oftentimes Western powers would bribe Qing authorities if something happened on their territory, the blast of this bomb was too heavy not to let the authorities investigate. The safe house was raided by Qing police and military. It quickly became clear what transpired, and the 3 men that had survived the blast were identified as revolutionaries. No time was wasted and they were executed immediately. Fate had it that the membership registers, in which all names of revolutionaries were written, thousands of them, survived the blast. The Qing authorities seized these and now possess the names of most, if not all, revolutionaries in the city. Thing is, on this list were the names of their colleagues, at least 5,000 of them. Obviously alarmed at the amount of soldiers on the list, soldiers began rounding up all revolutionary soldiers they could find. Soldiers that were members of secret societies understood that if they did not act fast, they too would be put against the wall. The first force that mutinied was a small force, the Wuchang 8 Engineer Battalion. On the morning of October 10th, ever since celebrated as Double 10 Day, they seized the ammunition depot of the city and were subsequently joined by transport and artillery units. Wuchang's forts were captured, and by the end of the day, 3 other regiments joined the resistance. After failed attempts to raise a sizable amount of loyal troops to protect his office, the Governor-General, Wuchang Manchu, fled the city together with the army commander. Forces that were still loyal to the Qing were routed, and over 500 were killed. The next day, October 11th, Hanyang was captured by the revolutionaries. Its military arsenal and ironworks were seized. It was after the capture of Hanyang the mutineers established the military government of Hubei. But they didn't have a prestigious public figure to take control and lead the revolution. The principal architect of the revolution in China, Sun Yat-sen, was in the United States. He would not learn about the revolution until 1 month later, reading about it in a Denver newspaper. Instead of quickly returning to China and assume leadership of the revolution, he first went to the United Kingdom and France in order to secure European neutrality. He managed to sway the British government that it would not loan any capital to the Qing anymore. Sun eventually returned to China, but only over 2 months after the revolution had started. In October, the revolution, confined to Wuhan for now, was still looking for its leader. The first person the revolutionaries approached was the president of the Provincial Assembly, who was quick to decline the offer. One of the Hubei new army commanders, popular among his troops, Li Yuanhong, was the second one to receive the request. He wasn't a revolutionary, but had played a prominent role during the railway controversy against the Qing and was liked by those in the Provincial Assembly. It is said he was forced at gunpoint to take the assignment of leading these rebels. Now, I'm not sure how true that is, but he certainly was hesitant, but eventually accepted. The next day, Hankou troops mutinied, captured the city, and the revolutionaries were on their way to capture the rest of the province. Once the imperial government found out what was going on in their Hubei province, their response was, understandably, to do everything in their power to absolutely annihilate these revolutionaries. The Minister of War, Yin Chang, coordinated the counterattack on Wuhan with 2 divisions of the Beiyang army. In Beijing, the Qing, and especially Prince Chun, regent to 5-year-old Emperor Puyi, was about to swallow his pride. The Beiyang army needed a competent general that was known by senior officers and respected by his troops. Yuan Shikai was that person. He had led the Beiyang army for years and served the Qing dynasty for decades. It just so happened to be Prince Chun forced Yuan into retirement 2 years before, and Yuan still held a grudge against the Qing because of it. While he held a grudge, he was an excellent negotiator and, unbeknownst to the Qing, he was highly ambitious. For now, he waited, but when he finally gave in, he would come to power on his own terms. 10 days after the Hubei military government was proclaimed in both Shaanxi and Hunan province, the new army mutinied. Massacres against the Manchu population took place and Qing commanders were killed. The members of the Provincial Assembly for the provinces explicitly voiced their support for the revolution. The uprising now spread over China at a fast pace. In Shaanxi, the governor and his family were killed. In the southwest, in Yunnan, and southeast, in Jiangxi, students, teachers, and merchants joined the army officers in revolt, declaring their independence from the Qing as well. The Tongmenghui took the central leading role upon itself in 3 provinces and formed anti-Qing alliances in many other provinces. Now that more provinces were swept by revolts, the military significance of railways became apparent. Troops from Beijing were sent to Wuhan only to be cut off by rebellions from Jiangxi. The supply lines of Yin Chang's army were blocked, and other senior commanders in the north started defying Qing orders. Instead of moving their troops south by rail, these commanders now met up and sent a telegram to Beijing containing 12 demands. The demands ranged from a functioning parliament and an elected prime minister, ratified by the emperor, to amnesty for all political offenders and blocking Manchus from official positions. As outrageous as these demands seem, the fact that Qing agreed to them within a week shows the dire situation the dynasty was in. During this time, Yuan was still negotiating both publicly and secretly on various levels. The Qing appointed him as the commander of all Qing forces. He was backed by most senior military commanders, enjoyed the loyalty of many troops, and on November 8, 1911, he was elected Prime Minister of China by members of the Beijing Provisional National Assembly. He was now to form a cabinet, which he did, primarily appointing his loyalists. It seemed that China was moving towards a constitutional monarchy, just like Russia and Japan had. The entire month of November, Yuan Shikai played a political game, pressuring both the revolutionaries and the Qing, attempting to get the most profit out of the whole situation. The Tongmenghui of Sun Yat-sen enjoyed an enormous amount of support among the Chinese. Nanking was captured by the revolutionaries in early December. It was the second biggest city of China and the former capital. The symbolic defeat was crushing to the already weak Qing. It was reminiscent of Prince Fu's defeat in 1645 and, of course, the capture of the city by Taiping rebels under Han Juquan in 1853. In Nanking, the Tongmenghui set up its provisional government. In the meantime, Yuan negotiated primarily with Prince Jun, regent of Puyi, and his consorts. Then, in December, the mother of Puyi took a leading role in the negotiations. She pushed the resignation of Prince Jun and authorized Yuan Shikai to rule as prime minister, with the emperor, her son Puyi, only retaining a ceremonial role. It was reminiscent of the role Empress Dowager Cixi had allocated to herself the past decades, and thus not very popular. Several victories of Yuan's troops over the revolutionaries followed, but he realized that with the suppression of the revolution, his usefulness to the Qing would again fade. On Christmas Day 1911, Sun Yat-sen arrived in Shanghai. Arriving at the provisional government in Nanjing, Sun was just in time to be elected provisional president of the Chinese Republic by delegates from 16 provincial assemblies. On New Year's Day 1912, he assumed office and the new Republic of China was born. It meant China now had both a Manchu emperor in Beijing and a Republican president in Nanjing, a situation that definitely could not go on for long. Sun realized he needed an army to consolidate his power. A charismatic man with a keen eye for political moves, he sent Yuan Shikai a telegram stating he only accepted the provisional presidency, so Yuan could later on assume the official presidency, as long as he would support the new republic. All the while, Yuan had been playing both sides of the conflict, and he now realized choosing the revolutionary side was probably going to be the most advantageous to him. As such, Yuan was willing to work with Sun, but indeed only if he could assume the presidency. He spent the next couple of weeks negotiating, both secretly and publicly, with both the provisional government in Nanjing and the imperial government in Beijing. Late January 1912, 44 senior commanders of the Beiyang army serving under Yuan Shikai sent a telegram to Beijing, urging them to create a republic. The Qing's mandate of heaven had now truly waned. Southern China had basically seceded, and Yuan Shikai now attempted to convince Puyi's regents that abdication was the only option left on the table. Some Manchu princes fled to Manchuria to lead the resistance, but the emperor's mother negotiated with Yuan. She managed to receive reassurance that Puyi could reside in the Forbidden City with his servants for years to come, and a generous stipend, to say the least. Puyi, China's last emperor, abdicated on the 12th of February 1912. The Qing dynasty, the ancient monarchy and Chinese empire, had officially come to an end. Yuan Shikai was granted full powers to organize a provisional republican government. Sun Yat-sen, staying true to his word, abdicated in favor of Yuan one day later. The deal was that Yuan would travel to Nanjing to set up his government, but unrest broke out in Beijing, which allowed Yuan to remain in Beijing in order to keep control. It is near certain Yuan had something to do with these episodes of unrest, and as such, ominously, Yuan Shikai was sworn in Beijing, the imperial capital, not Nanjing, the republican capital. He was to have supreme power with loyalists appointed at crucial positions in China's military and bureaucracy. A parliament was to be elected and full constitutional government was going to be established. As time went on, however, it became clear that Yuan Shikai had other plans when it came to both his own position and China as a whole. In 1912, after decades of hardships and an erosion of their mandate of heaven, the Qing dynasty finally collapsed. After a brief period where Dr. Sun Yat-sen was China's first president, Yuan Shikai overtook this post and started his tenure. He prevented an all-out civil war but was to betray the revolutionaries later on. If you want to know how China and the Qing dynasty got up to this point, with all revolutions, rebellions, wars and political intrigues, consider checking out the playlist on the screen, detailing the collapse of the Qing dynasty from the Opium Wars all the way up to this point. Next week will be the last chronological episode in this series. It covers the decline of the Republic into a period of warlordism. Feudal lords, often having served under Yuan Shikai, were now fighting for influence in their respective provinces. This warlord era is a fascinating yet often forgotten period. I'm certainly looking forward to it. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.